You may start now.
This is Stefan and Stid. They have been steadfast guardians of HSBC since the 1930s, guarding the bank in the physical world. But threats no longer just lie in the physical world, but the digital one as well. Today, we will awaken the lions and enable them to be the sentinels of the digital landscape of today and tomorrow. Good afternoon, judges. We are Leo Associates. I'm JX, and I'm joined by Vicky, Zoe, and George. And it's through our Dual Lion Protection project that will deliver lower scam rates, higher threat flagging, as well as cost reductions. First, let's dive into the digital savannah and see what we're up against. HSBC has done amazingly well in fraud management capabilities, incorporating AI and behavioral biometrics into a comprehensive fraud detection engine. However, we see that we can further enhance this through two ways. One, the data, and two is understanding the constantly evolving threat landscape that HSBC operates in. When we look at the AI models that have been implemented, we can see that the effectiveness can be classified into two buckets, the model itself and the data. For the models, HSBC has in-house tailored machine learning models as well as external ones from vendors. Therefore, HSBC already has sophisticated models on hand. But the data, 45% of financial institutions cite data as a top barrier for fraud management. And why is that so? If we look at it, low availability due to regulations, right, no mechanisms for sharing, as well as the perception of competitiveness. If we look at quality, fraud-related data can be scarce, it can be missing fields, errors, typos, as well as numbers that can sway an AI model's output. And therefore, this leads us to the first key question of how can HSBC gain access to comprehensive and reliable data. And now, for our first lion, Vicky will walk us through how we can predict with STID.
Thank you, Jingxiang. Let's now predict with STID and then deep dive into our strategy. So, in this day and age of AI banking, we now know that to tackle fraud management, the key here is not reaction, but prediction. However, currently, HSBC does not have a robust, holistic, fraud-related database to enable such predictions. HSBC utilizes its local database, which is constantly fed into its AI model, in-house predictive engine. Hence, the current predictive model operates on a siloed basis, which follows a linear feedback process, which limits data availability, as well as compromises data quality at times. And because fraud management is not just an issue that tackles HSBC alone, but rather it is an industry-level issue, we believe that the ecosystem needs to come together and combat this issue. This leads us to our first recommendation, which is HSBC, under its leadership, to initiate a data collaboration consortium, which will ultimately allow HSBC to enhance a more robust AI fraud predictive engine. This will be powered by the federated learning architecture, and let's deep dive into the step-by-step of the mechanism. So to begin with, the participating pool of banks and partners will train and build their own in-house AI predictive engine. Now, what are the local data inputs going into the respective predictive engines of these institutions? Now, we're looking at raw customer transaction data at this point, such as historical transaction anomalies, customer biometrics, followed by identity verification and onboarding data. Now, you may also be wondering, who are the stakeholders that are involved in this consortium? While not exhaustive, we want to categorize this into three big buckets of participants, being peer banks, financial institutions, followed by third-party technology vendors, ending off with government bodies such as the Hong Kong Monetary Association. Now, we know that these are the stakeholders that we want to focus on, but why should we focus on these stakeholders?
For the consortium, what are the incentives for all the stakeholders that you mentioned? And also because of FR, the cost is quite high, how you convince every party to invest in it at the very beginning?
Yeah, so regarding what the incentive for each of the participants is, that's what I'll actually be covering right here. So who are the stakeholders to begin with for peer banks and financial institutions? Because we know that a single bank's data set is inefficient to catch evolving threats in the fraud landscape, what we're trying to do is pool data from multiple parties, and this will give not only HSBC access to a more robust database, but it will allow other parties within the ecosystem to reap the benefits of the database that's pulled together, and therefore, that is the win-win partnership that we're trying to propose. Yeah, then following which, for third-party technology vendors, it also allows the vendors to join the HSBC ecosystem and allow them to gain scale and stickiness. And lastly, for government bodies, HSBC is able to enjoy regulatory oversight, ensuring that their models remain auditable and privacy preserving through this. And the Hong Kong government is also able to successfully assist this process and position Hong Kong as a global innovation hub for fraud management. Yeah, so that will be the incentives. And
two questions, if you don't mind. How do you maintain customer privacy within this? And if you're going to talk about it later, just say you're going to talk about it later. The second question is, you've just created one massive data lake with everyone's data in. What stops that getting hacked?
There will be a central model that will pool all the data, and in the process, data privacy will be ensured, which I'll be following up. Yeah. So within this now, yes, to address your question also. So how will data privacy concerns be addressed? And this is a critical issue because data privacy issue has been the enduring challenge, as well as the bottleneck causing challenges in facilitating this data collaboration effort. And hence, what we will do is to leverage HSBC's current partnership with Google and to utilize Google technologies in differential privacy library, as well as the TensorFlow software, which will essentially allow HSBC to filter all raw customer data from each of these financial institutions and partners and use the sensitized model parameters and not raw data inputs into the centralized model. Yeah, so what are the exact model parameters that we're looking at? We're looking into feature importance rankings, detection thresholds, also anomaly cluster centroids, all of which will be sensitized information, ensuring that no raw customer data is outflown into the central model. Yeah.
Do you actually need customer data for this?
I think the beginning point of the data input, yes, we do. But in terms of generating the predictive insights that will be powered back into the predictive engines of these institutions, it's not that we need customer data, but we need the data points in which the fraud patterns have been detected in the process. Yes.
But actually, you need a kind of centralized data schema that everyone follow the same, that you can identify the same person within different data spaces. So who is going to be responsible for that?
The central model, the data will be pulled back into the central model, and
the schema. Who set the schema?
The Hong Kong government, as well as the Hong Kong Monetary Association, will be overseeing the central model.
Okay. You may try.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more, if I may?
Yeah.
Why would a peer bank share with us their vulnerability?
Right, so I think...
Why would we share in turn? Well, because it's a vulnerability.
Yeah, so I think to look at this, we need to look at fraud as a industry level thing, right? That fraud is not a competitive advantage. Fraud is a systemic issue, right? That's affecting not just HSBC, but everyone else as well. And it's through this central model, right, that, as a bank, if you're not part of a central model leveraging on the data, on this massive database of fraud-related data, you are going to lose out. And therefore, that is, to us, the value proposition of this is central model. It is that when you train an AI model, you need data. Data is a very key input. And these banks will be willing to join to this consortium as well.
How long does it take if you need to align, all the banks to join, or have you got the percentage? How many bank participants will be a kind of representative for this model? Yeah,
thank you for the question. So obviously, we're going to leverage on banks that HSBC Hong Kong has partnered with before. So Standard Chartered Bank and Bank of China. So they've worked together in fraud management as well. But over there, we do see that, as HSBC as a global bank, will not have problems getting other global banks to be part of this as well. And I think the second part of the question is the rollout, which I think my colleague will explain this later. Yeah.
That means that if Bank of China, Standard Chartered Bank, and HSBC, at least these three is participant, you already collect sufficient data, for this model.
Yes, we are confident of that.
Okay. Yep.
All right, so going back into that, we have addressed data privacy issues. And hence, using this, the central model will now act as the hub, synthesizing and aggregating the parameter inputs to generate predictive insights and reach a consensus, which will then be flown back into the respective predictive engines of the participating institutions. And bringing this back to the perspective of HSBC, HSBC is able to reap the benefits of scale, trust, and speed in solidifying its fraud-related database. Yep, and the predictive engine will also be engaged in an iterative feedback loop with the central model, which will allow the predictive engine to be constantly updated and improved based on the most recent fraud-related data. And this will also allow HSBC to reap the benefits of high-quality data insights to solidify its predictive engine. Yeah, so with this, HSBC is equipped with a more holistic data access framework to power its predictive engines. Yeah, so at this juncture, now you may be wondering, with data protection and compliance being such a key issue, how do we achieve that? Well, a case study showcased by NVIDIA's collaboration with KCL and healthcare actually proves the success of this model, as the federated learning system was actually utilized for medical imaging analysis, and we believe that this case study is highly relevant and critical for HSBC, as medical and the healthcare sector is just as heavily regulated as the financial services sector, and hence we believe that there's a learning point for HSBC. Yep. This answers our key question 1, and I'll be passing my time back to Jingxiang.
Thank you, Vicky. Now, before I introduce Stefan, let's look at the threat landscape that we operate in. Threats have evolved over time with technologies, but so have HSBC's initiatives. But obviously, the question is, what is in the future? We see that HSBC and the fraudsters are locked in an arms race. HSBC employs AI to develop defense technologies, but the fraudsters will do the same, but develop attack tactics. But this arms race is not equal. We look at this. For the fraudsters, the cost of a deepfake tool is $20. What's that? A couple of dim sums? You compare that to the $15 billion that JP Morgan spent in 2024 alone on defense capabilities. That is more than an annual revenue of dim sum restaurants in Hong Kong. Therefore, HSBC cannot win by simply outspending them. You have to outsmart them by embedding resilience in your processes. And it comes to the core of it, that the fraudsters just have to be lucky once. But HSBC has to be constantly on guard. And it leads us to our second key question of how can HSBC stay ahead of this evolving threat landscape. I'll pass my time to Zoe to walk us through how to prove with Stefan.
Thanks, Jingxiang. So with the consortium, HSBC's models are now robustly trained to be able to identify the most prevalent of scam frauds. Now, let's introduce Proof with Stefan to show you how you can future-proof HSBC's system against fraud. Now, the key here is agentic AI. The robust capabilities of the model is built from the central model, and this will be adapted into the onboarding and transaction phases of the customer journey in order to future-proof the entirety of the banking process. Now, at the onboarding stage, we can reduce the amount of fraud by first controlling who has access to HSBC's accounts. And so, we take the example of a new user who is registering with HSBC. We don't know if he is a real customer or if he's a fraudster hiding behind deepfake technology. So we put him through the advanced human verification model that filters out our fraudsters and brings the customers to the next stage, which is risk profiling. Here, customers are assigned a risk profile depending on their vulnerability to financial fraud. This will be used to determine how much attention our future systems are able to provide the customer when it comes to fraud detection. Looking at it from Samuel, a potential customer's perspective, he is signing up with HSBC and has such been asked to undergo the human verification process. But instead of just a simple selfie like we have now, he is asked to film a short video of himself holding a peace sign next to his face. Well, it could have been anything, actually, because these video assessments are entirely randomized to ensure that our deepfake fraudsters are not able to produce a video in advance. Furthermore, the consortium-fed detection model will ensure that HSBC is able to identify the most advanced forms of deepfake fraud, and this will prevent fraudsters from creating accounts with HSBC. Now, Samuel is moved on to the risk profiling stage, and he will be presented with a questionnaire that is built upon these factors which are key for considering his risk profile, such as his demographic and his social and family network. And then he is assigned a risk profile, which ensures that he is well taken care of according to his level of vulnerability to risk.
ask you for the questionnaire how many questions?
It could be any amount of questions that we have not exactly decided what yet, but we will definitely be using these key factors so that we can address these buckets.
That means it's a kind of dynamic questions. Let's say if
Yes,
you find it's more risky, you will give them more questions.
Yes, according to their previous answers, more questions could be drawn out based on what the system feels is the most weak point.
And how many minutes if I'm a new customer, if I want to open... Sorry, yeah.
Okay. We can answer that later. Now, moving on to the transaction phase. The key here is to understand the context behind why these fraudulent transactions occur in order to really pinpoint them. For example, let's say that I've just received a message from my boss via video asking me to make a transaction. Normally, I will go through the authentication page as well as have digital behavioral profile metrics run at the background. And these are really good at getting patterns and identifying fraudulent transactions through unusual activity. But we can do better by examining the context behind why these transactions occur that reveal key factors like who requested this transaction, why am I making it, and how did I receive the request to do this in the first place. Upon this level of consideration, I then realized that this was a deep fake video all along. And it would not have been in my true intention to make this transaction. So, HSBC can protect its customers against this form of psychological manipulation by first flagging out risky transactions. These risky transactions will then move on to the verification stage, which is fronted by the AI agent. The AI agent will pose a set of questions to help understand the context behind why these transactions occurred, and then if the agent is fairly certain that this is a fraudulent transaction, it then has the power to move it to the human agent in order to have further verification. Now, the point of all of this is to break the fraud spell and create a reasoning buffer for our customers to think more about why they are making this transaction before it takes place. Now that completes our dual lion protection strategy. Let's see how Stefan and Sid can create real impact for HSBC.
Thank you, Zoe. So moving on to the financial impact. So now, we predict about $3 billion in terms of savings that can be prevented from the scams through operations staff being able to deploy to more high-value added activities. We predict a 6 times increase in threats flagged. Now, AI strategies definitely are not cheap. From HSBC's side, we also forecast about a $5 million investment. Yes, that is indeed steep. But with regards to our cost savings, over the next 5 years, we actually forecast a $9 million net present value in terms of savings through streamlining staff as well as improving value-added services. Now, onwards to implementation. Due to HSBC's excellent fraud management capabilities and its proven execution in rolling them out fast, we believe that this is something that can be achieved over the next few quarters. Something that I would like to highlight is that we will also specifically have a training phase where customers actually get to use it, provide feedback, and HSBC can continuously iterate and improve on it. Now, HSBC is a global bank, but before thinking internationally, we are looking to starting off in Hong Kong. In terms of key risks, customer psychology is something that we cannot prevent. That is something that customers will make decisions when they are stressed. How we go about resolving them really is through the onboarding stage, where we tell them that risk and scams are highly possible and for them to be careful. The AI agent prevents a buffer afterwards. Now, all in all, what comes down is that we are able to deliver this dual lion protection project with tangible impact that helps safeguard HSBC's customers, all of which will allow HSBC to enhance its reputation and deliverable tangible results to its users. Now, with a mighty roar, Stefan and Sid are ready to protect and safeguard the digital age. Thank you very much.
Your presentation time is up. We will move forward to the Q&A session now. Q&A session starts now.
So I got 2 questions. First one, actually not a question, but a comment. I believe that the consortium is a good move, but actually HSBC should not be the initiator. Yeah, because if you imagine that if HSBC is going to initiate that, whether the banks, other banks, what they think. So that's the first one that you may further consider who should initiate all this. But if you find the right entity, you may take a step backward. What is the role of HSBC? So that is the first one. The second one is about the multi-factors authentication during the onboarding process. Of course, it's good to ask more and more questions, but you should think about the user's experience. If you are going to answer 100 questions before you open an account, I believe that you already leave. Yeah, so something like that. So I think the proposal is good, but some more details that you should consider. Thanks.
I think I agree. I think maybe just to briefly comment on the second point. So in terms of the question, we're actually keeping it short. So we try not to go past 10 questions. And I think using AI, let's say customers, they are inherently low risk. For example, you're a digital native, you grew up here, you are well educated. So naturally, the questionnaire will be a breeze and it will be very short and succinct. But let's say if you're someone that were higher risk or higher threat, that is when there are sometimes more questions. And we think that it is necessary to kind of prevent them from suffering future losses.
So I think just a quick comment on the first point, right? Which is that actually there is something similar in the UK, which is a core market of HSBC. So if you look at Barclays and this initiative called Fraud Kill Chain, so it's also trying to tackle fraud management as well. So I think even though there may be concerns about HSBC initiating this, I think what is the I'll say relieving factor for the other banks is also that the regulators are involved as well. So there's a certain level of I'll say order in the entire consortium.
I think, well, as you mentioned, the solution works well for digital natives, but we bank everyone. How do you support those people?
Sorry, may I just to clarify, your question is on how people who are not digitally native?
We have a universal customer base.
Yes.
Not all of them are particularly tech savvy.
Yeah.
All of our customers are great, but not all of them are tech savvy.
Yes, I agree.
How do we support them?
So I think there's two aspects. So normally, let's say when we go towards scams, a lot of scams actually stem from digital transfers or online transfers. Because let's say when we look towards the elderly, there's been many case studies when, let's say they are transferring sums of money, it tends to go through like phone call or an in-person visit. And I think across Asia, across the world, so recently there was just a case in UOB, another bank, which kind of, the staff stop the customer from making a transaction. So that is something that is very easily doable. But when we look at online transfers, when we look at digital transfers, there are elderly that may have unlocked like internet banking capabilities, and that is a very vulnerable part. So that's why our main strategy kind of tackles this element where there's no human oversight, there's no human that can provide another opinion or kind of just to assure them that this may be a suspicious transaction, something that you have to watch out for. So in a sense, we're kind of capturing and covering all bases.
Just to add on to that, besides key demographics like age, which are direct factors into determining whether someone has more of an experience with technology or not, we are also considering other factors like their financial behavior. If they are prone to making investments that perhaps are more risky, then that would be a factor in determining whether they are of high or no risk.
Have you put some thought around the timeline of the consortium? So how long it would take to set that up and what type of effort?
Yeah, so that's something that we've definitely considered. So if we look at it, so essentially the first phase where we try to get partners on board, generally because the unique selling point and the key advantages of joining the consortium is clear, most of the major players we predict will kind of sign up early. So it's also the fact that when we have continuative iterations across this long period, it's kind of as time goes on, even if let's say we don't have all the partners on board at the start, but through kind of like using the data that we have from other partners, we kind of deliver like outstanding results, and that kind of convinces more stakeholders to join in. So it's kind of like a continuous process where as we scale and as we grow, more and more people will be aligned to join us.
Would you recommend doing that questionnaire regularly?
Q&A time is up. Please stop. This is the end of your presentation session. Thank you, Leo Associates.